Okay, aft fins are going to go on first. Alright, and you can go ahead and lightly sand where those fins are going to go. Okay, and it doesn't take much, just give it a few strokes. This just gives the glue a better place to hold. Okay, and then using either white glue or wood glue, go ahead and put a fairly thin, even bead of glue. Okay, now I'm going to just touch this down at the mark. Okay, and now I'm going to let that get tacky for about 30 to 60 seconds and then put it back on. Alright, once the glue is tacky, go ahead and put the fin back on. Alright, and then we're going to check this to make sure it's perpendicular and centered. Alright, and then I'm going to repeat this with the other 4 aft fins off camera. Here you can see the fin alignment guide that I'm using, and my fins should be dry enough that I can move this up. Okay, and now I'm going to put the main fins on, and again that's where these marks are here. So just like we did with the aft fins, we're going to go ahead and sand the line where that fin's going to go. And again, you don't need to do a lot, just kind of drag this along once or twice. Main fins are going to go on in the same fashion that we did the aft fins. So again, here we'll go ahead and run a thin bead of glue. Okay, and now I'm going to place this on the fin line, matching it with my mark back here. Okay, and I'll pull that off, let that get tacky for 30 to 60 seconds, and then put it back on. And then what I'll do is I'll push the fin guide back over the fin to make sure it's aligned, and then I will use that to put the other 3 fins on as well. Once again, the glue is tacky. So I'm going to put this back on where I had it. Alright, make sure everything's lined up. Okay, so I'm going to sight down this. And now I can go ahead and move my fin guide in. Okay, and this will help me make sure that my forward and my aft fins are aligned with each other. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and add the other 3 fins off camera. The last fin set are the very forward fins, and these are little tiny guys here, appear to be made out of basswood, and the instructions Don't recommend tapering these things because they are so thin. And this is the longest edge is the root edge, so these are going to go on like that. Now something you can do here is use an emery file and just give these a little bit of sanding here. If you really want to, you can use sanding sealer on this as well. Alright, now I don't know if you can see this in the video, but the edge on my fin here has got a little bit of waviness to it. Like maybe something bumped the laser cutter or something. So I'm just going to take my emery file once more and just even that out. Okay. Now, if you really do want to round this, you can do it with the emery file here. I'm not necessarily going to round it completely over. I'm just going to take some of the corner edge off there. We'll see how this goes. Alright, and then just like we did with the larger fins, you can kind of roll the emery board here. And give yourself a rounded cross section. Okay, so I think if you were to try and taper these, it'd probably make them really fragile. But just give them a round over here on the leading edge, and I think that'll give us a little bit better performance without too much additional risk of damage. Okay, and then we'll just go ahead and quickly do trailing edge. I'm just going to sand it flat as well as the root edge here. Alright, for the root edge you can even just go take a piece of sandpaper and drag it over that just once or twice. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the face here a little bit more. Okay, and the rest of that grain, since it's basswood, the grain's going to be much tighter than if it were balsa. And so I think that'll just fill in with a little bit of primer on it. Okay, I'm going to treat the other 3 fins the same way off camera. Now that I have the forward fins sanded and shaped, we can go ahead and put these on. Now, these are too small to use with my fin alignment guide, so I'm going to have to do these the old-fashioned way. And just like we did before, I'm going to just sand a little bit where those fins are going to go. Okay, but otherwise this is going to go on just like I did before. So here we're going to apply just a small amount of glue to the root edge. Okay, and then we're just going to put that on. And these are lightweight enough that you probably don't even have to wait for it to get tacky, especially if you're using a wood glue here. Alright, and then go ahead and sight along the other fins. Alright, and I'll just let that dry for about 5 minutes and then move on to each of the other 3 fins. The fins are dry on the Rocket, and so now I'm going to go back and put the main channel piece here on. Now the instructions just show that gluing this on the way it is. I'm going to show you an optional thing we can do here to help it fit better. And so I'm just going to take some 150 grit sandpaper and I'm going to put that on a scrap piece of BT60 body tube here. This does not come with the kit. And then I'm going to use that to sand the bottom side of the channel. Okay, actually it looks like I can use, we'll start off with some 100 grit here. But this will just make it conform to the body tube easily. Okay, so you can still see a gap there, and that's what you're going to see if you don't do this, which isn't that big a deal. You can go ahead and add fillets to that. Alright, but I'm going to go ahead and give this a little more sanding. The hardest part about doing this is making sure that you keep the sanding tube in the middle and straight. So now we can bring this back once more. Okay, and if I put pressure on it, I don't have as much gap anymore. Alright, I'm going to give this just a little more sanding now with the 150 grit. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and add some wood glue to this. And I'm going to do this in a manner similar to that that I use for the fin. I'm actually going to let this get tacky before we put it on permanently. Okay, so here I'm going to run a fairly thin bead of glue here. Okay, I'm going to use my finger here just to even that out. Okay, now recall that we made marks down here for the channel. And so that's where one end of it has to go, is even with those marks. And then in between the two lines that we drew. Okay, and I'm going to pop that up. Alright, and I'm going to let that get tacky for about a minute, and then we'll come back and put it on again. Okay. So now the glue's a little bit tacky. We can come back here once more. I'm going to make sure I'm centered in my channel markings there. Alright, now I'm just going to press down on that. Okay, and now I'm going to let this dry fully before we go on to anything else, so I don't accidentally pop it back off again. A little bit of the channel kind of buckled, especially over here at the ends as the glue is drying, so I had to reset that. And I'm going to go ahead and put some fillets on as additional reinforcement, and also to fill in the crack there that did not hold down as well as I'd hoped. Alright, instead of going from one end to the other, I'm going to start in about the middle here and move toward the ends. And I want to be careful I don't get a lot of glue outside of that area, because I don't want to interfere with the fins yet. Smooth that in again. I'm just going to let that dry horizontally, and then when I come back we should be able to work on the trim for the fins. Alright, we're getting close to being done with the fins. What we need to do next is add these supports. Now these wider ones here actually go on the forwardmost fins, and on the left side if you're looking at it from the top downward. So we just need to go through and cut these out. There we go. And the other ones here, these are the supports for the main fins, the middle set, and that will have one on each side, so we'll come to that later. Here I'm going to use my emery file again. You can use sandpaper as well. I'm just going to give each of the edges that had the tabs on them just a little stroke here to remove those attachment points. I am not going to try and sand these. Once I have them in place, I'll use the emery board to touch them up a little bit. I'll set aside the other set for now. Okay, so I'm going to bring the rocket around here. Alright, so this is the forward end. These pieces are going to go to the left. So kind of like that. And they should have enough flexibility in them to kind of mold themselves to the body tube. But this means you're going to have to hold them in place for quite a while for each one to make sure they stick well. Okay, so here I've got the first one glued into place. And now I'm just going to repeat this with the other three fins, but I'll do that off camera. Here I have the fin supports for the main fins here, and you can see these are really delicate.
Like with the forward fin braces, I just used an emery board to touch up the edges there where they were cut out of the balsa, and I'll do any finishing sanding I need to do after they're on the fins. Now, much like the other one, this does not take a lot of glue. Okay, I have all of the fin braces put in, and all of the other trim pieces have been glued on. So now I'm going to put fillets on everything, and I'm going to use white glue for this because I want it to kind of run into the nooks and crannies, and it does that better than the white glue or the wood glue does. Okay, so I'm just going to start right here. Okay, and you can kind of work around the trim pieces. This is another reason I'm using the white glue, is that it should not overwhelm the details here as much as wood glue would. Okay, and then I'm just going to smooth these in like I would any other. Okay, so just like that. Now the wood glue does tend to run a bit more, so I can do facing fins here, and even though I've got it horizontal, I'm going to wait probably 5 or so, maybe 10 minutes before I go on to the next 2 facing fins. Alright, and so I'm going to let this dry for, I said 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll continue with everything else off camera. But we still have to do all the rest of the main fins, the forward fins, the aft fins. Looks like I need to put another fillet on the channel, and then we also have the launch lugs as well. So quite a bit of work to do off camera here. But when that's all done, really the only thing left after that is to assemble the recovery system and work on the painting. Here's the rocket after 2 coats of primer, and one of the things that this is going to show me is, first of all, I've got little fibers down here, and with the primer on there it's easier to sand those fibers off and keep them off. But this also shows me where any imperfections are. So, you know, we can still see some grain to the fin material there. Alright. We can see where there's a little gap in the joint there between the tail cone and the body tube. Okay. And so this is things that just make it easier to find and fix, more so than if you don't prime it. So even though probably most of the spray cans out there on the market today are a combination paint and primer, I still recommend using a regular primer here before you paint it, just so you can see where any imperfections are. And then it's up to you whether you want to fix those or how much you want to put effort into that. So I'm going to give this a little bit of light sanding to even out the places that the primer is showing me that I didn't quite get, and then we'll start on the paint. Here, the main body of the rocket has had several coats of primer, and then I've sanded on top of that, and it's ready for its top coat of light gray. Here I've painted the main part of the rocket just a basic gloss gray, and this is going to dry overnight, and when we come back we can start putting on the decals.
Now that my paint is dry, we can add the decals. You want to make sure you have the decal placement guide here from the instructions. Now we have both vinyl and water slide decals. I'm going to do the vinyl ones here first. So there's a blue stripe and then a copper stripe. And these simply go around the model. Okay, so the copper stripe is at 6 inches from the forward end of the body tube. So if we measure that, and it's going to start and end at the main channel there. So I'm just going to make a really, really light little mark here. Alright, and then the blue one will be at 7 inches. Okay. Try to make that just a little darker. There we go. Now you can try doing these dry and just peeling them off and putting them on. But I really like to use what I call the dish soap method here. So I've got a basin of water and it has just a drop of generic dishwashing detergent in it. And what this will do is lubricate the decal so that we can move it and replace it as necessary. But then once the water dries off, it becomes permanent. Okay, so I'm going to start here at the mark I made. So I'll cover up that mark. Okay, and then we're just going to try and keep this nice and straight and bring it around. Okay, that one's not even close to straight. And this is why we have the detergent here. So this allows us to move things as necessary. Okay, so this is going to tell me a couple of things here. First of all, I want to start this right next to my channel there, and you can kind of let it run into the fillet. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. So once we've got it on there, just take a tissue and squeegee off the water. And that still looks like I'm trying to go up and then down. Ha! Now I can't get it back off. Alright, I'm going to leave it the way it is for now. Okay, same thing for the blue one here. Alright, so we'll also dip that in the water. Okay, and we'll place it in the same manner. Now something to note, you can only do this with a well-painted rocket. You don't want to use this technique on a non-painted surface because the water will become absorbed into unpainted cardboard. Come back here. So once again here, we'll go ahead and wipe that down. And we'll go ahead and let those dry for just a few minutes, and then we'll come back and do the water slide decals. Alright, now that the vinyl decals are in place, we can put on the water slides. And for this we just need some room temperature water. Alright, and I'm going to start out with the informational slide here. Okay, and it should go, I'm going to turn this around to match the diagram here. Okay, so the data decal here is going to go just below the front fins, and the bottom edge should be in line with the fins. Okay, so here you can use either scissors or a hobby knife to cut these out. Now these little shapes here, those are decals too, so don't lose them. Alright, and then we're just going to put this into the water until the paper is saturated and the decal starts to move off. Okay, and then we'll just try and slide this a little bit. Not quite ready yet. Almost there. There we go. So the decal now is sliding easily. Okay, and so this should go right about there. And so I'm just holding on with my thumb to the decal and then pulling out the paper from there. Okay, and so we can move this a little bit as necessary. So that looks pretty good just the way it is. So then once you've got it in place, go ahead and squeegee off the water. Next we have these bands of screws or rivets. I'm not sure which it's supposed to be. Okay, so I'm going to use my hobby knife on this one and my ruler. So I do want a nice straight clean edge on this. Okay, now this is going to go right up here at the edge of the body tube. A little bit of excess there, we can remove that. Alright, and once again into the water. So that's moving now. Okay, and here once again, hold it down with a finger or a thumb, and then draw the paper out. Okay, and then we can adjust it a little bit here. And I found if we just pull it a bit and let that move around, that'll get us pretty straight there. Alright, and then we'll have a a second row underneath that, about 1 inch. Okay, and that's going to be these ones that don't have the line on them. So we'll go ahead and cut that out. Okay, and once more, put that into the water. That one is loose. Alright, and basically this one's just going to go right above the forward fins. I'm going to turn this around. Alright, and as before, we can kind of just rotate this around to get it straight. And then we'll just take a tissue here and blot off the excess water. Alright, you get the idea here, so I'm going to finish this off camera. Here I have all of the decals done, and I just noticed I made a small mistake here. So this row of rivets without the line on it should be down here at the aft end, and this one that has the line on it should be up here below the front one that also has a line on it. But unless you actually know something about this, when you see it from a distance, nobody's going to know. Okay, so if you watch this video all the way through, you'll know not to make that mistake. Our last task then is to do the final assembly of everything here. Now if you've seen my other videos, you know what's coming next. Alright, while the instructions show to tie the parachute directly to the nose cone, I am not going to do that. I am going to use a snap swivel. And so, first of all, just gather all these loops around one finger and then hold the parachute sheet at the middle like this. Alright, and then you can adjust back and forth here the relative length of each of those shroud lines until all those corners meet in about the same position. Alright, now I'm going to hold the shroud lines so they don't change in their relative lengths to each other. The snap swivel you can get at the fishing section of sporting goods or department stores. The size doesn't matter as long as the snap part will fit around the nose cone and move freely. So we're going to put the loops of our shroud lines through the swivel end here. Reopen those. Now back here on my hand, I've still got tension on the shroud lines, so they're not moving. Now put the entire swivel through that loop, pull the loop down, and pull it taut. Alright, and then go back and make sure that you haven't changed the relative lengths of the shroud lines. When you've got it where you want it, then just apply a small dot of wood glue or white glue to that knot. Okay, and just kind of work it into the threads there, and it doesn't take much. If you got excess, just remove it. Alright, now we need the nose cone here and the shock cord. I'm just going to shake the shock cord out here. Okay, so our shock cord is going to get tied on here. Just put in a double knot or 2 half hitches. And try to keep the free end here off the knot as short as you can. Alright, and I'm going to pull that from every direction that I can think of. Alright, and then if you've got some here, if this is long enough that it can get up between the shoulder and the body tube, go ahead and cut that back, but leave about 5 to 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch so that it can't pull through the knot. And then on the knot itself, just like we did with the shroud lines, just work in a little dot of wood glue or white glue, and that'll just help keep that from getting unraveled. Okay, and now when we're ready to put everything together, we'll just attach our snap swivel to the eyelet. Alright, or you can just tie the parachute on as the instructions show. I need some more room here. Alright, and here again, this is where the size of the snap swivel matters. So as long as it can rotate freely there, any size that works and does that is fine. Alright, now I'm just going to take my parachute here and fold it roughly into a triangle. And I'm going to take my shroud lines at about the middle, pull those up onto my triangle, and then fold the sides over that, and then fold that in half, and then into quarters. Now remember, this has an ejection baffle, and so wadding is not required if you're prepping this for launch. So we can just put our shot cord down inside first, followed by our parachute. Okay, and then the nose cone. And now one final finishing touch you might want to do is to apply a clear coat to this to help keep the decals in place. If you do that, make sure you wait probably at least 12 hours, better yet 24, to get all of the liquid evaporated out of the decals, and then do this in really light coats so the decals don't crinkle. Alright, and with that, that is our rocket. Okay, so there's some details to this, but overall came out pretty good. Hope you had fun doing this. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.